Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Tonight we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Chris V. Ray. That's going to be our guest tonight. That's got a lot of nuggets that he's going to drop and share with you all tonight. Let me tell you a little something about Chris. Chris was born in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, but spent his formidable years in Spring Lake, North Carolina. He graduated high school as a track and field All-American and attended East Carolina University on a full athletic scholarship. Ray enlisted into the U.S. Army as a computer information technology analyst. After 2 short years, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Signal Corps through the U.S. Army Officer Candidate School. Thereafter, he saw deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan. His service and leadership in the armed forces earned him numerous military awards and accolades, including the Bronze Star and Meritorious Service Medal. Ray returned at rank of major after 22 years of combined active and National Guard service. In 2008, Ray was elected as the youngest member of the Virginia delegation to the United States Electoral College, where he officially cast the ballot to elect the President and Vice President of the United States. In 2011, Ray was the youngest person elected to serve as mayor of Spring Lake, North Carolina, where he served 3 terms. Ray has worked as an executive in corporate America and the nonprofits in the nonprofit sector. As an entrepreneur, he has created or helped create several companies. Ray is the founder of HBCU Internships Foundation, Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to providing internship opportunities to HBCU students around the world. For over a decade, he served as an adjunct professor where he taught classes on organizational leadership, constitutional law, criminal law, juvenile justice, criminal courts, and cyber crimes. Ray has presented numerous times around the world, working with local governments on developing strategic plans that focus on growing their economy and their communities. In 2021, he was elected the 36th International President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, one of the nation's largest and oldest historical Black fraternities committed to community service to all humanity. In 2023, he was reelected to a second term. On July 17, 2023, President Ray started his duties as president of Barber Scotia College, one of the nation's oldest institutions of higher education. Ray holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a minor in Information Systems from Walden University and a Juris Doctorate degree from William & Mary School of Law. He is currently pursuing an MBA from the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Ray currently serves as Board of Visitors for Fayetteville State University, the Alumni Association Board of Directors for William & Mary University, and Board of Trustee for Charisma University. He is married and is a father of 9 beautiful children. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Chris Ray.
Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you? Oh man, you just got it all going on there, don't you?
I am. My goodness. Whenever you hear it out loud, you're like, wait a minute. Is that? Wait a minute. But you got to, but I'm reminded, it's God. So, I'm going to let him do what he do best, just use these good talents that he's given me to be able to do what I do. So.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to that wonderful introduction?
Oh my goodness, absolutely not. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said. I no, I don't. I don't. I just, again, always whenever I hear it out loud, it's just a reminder of how far I've come, and and what my hopes and dreams are to continue to, make a difference, and just God has allowed me to be in a lot of different spaces where I've been able to help a lot of people, right? Whether it's being the mayor of a city, whether it's being an officer in the military, serving my country, whether it's being the national president of a global nonprofit organization, or now trying to resurrect a historically black college. It has been an interesting journey, but that's what life is, right? It's a journey,
Right.
and being able to overcome, and all of us overcome something, right? And I think a
Sir.
lot of people don't realize when you're in the midst of doing it, you don't realize how significant it is until you're actually out of it, right? So, and it's a true statement when they say it's not about how you start in life; it's truly about how you finish. I
Mhm.
started in a two-bedroom trailer in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, with me and my grandmother, and now I get to be the college, the president of a college.
Mhm.
So and who else knows what God has for me? So it's just continuing to walk in that grace and, man, in that favor, and but knowing who you are, whose you are, but then also not allowing it to get to your head to the point to where you think that you do have it just going on, right? Don't believe your own hype. And I try to be reminded of that in this journey, uh, I was I've been blessed with certain talents. I know my talents that I have. I've done the inner work, and I accept who I am. I accept the talents that I have, um, and I don't sit back and look at other people and say, "Man, I wish I had that," or "I wish I had what they had," or
Mhm.
because their talents is uniquely for them, right? And I think that so many people spend so much time trying to look like others, trying to be like others, trying to emulate their talents instead of initially taking stock of the talents that they actually have, and then letting it work for them. Sometimes that's just half that's half the battle in life. Is knowing what you got and building on what you have so that you can go head on and and move in that. And that's what I've decided to do, and by doing that, I've been able to, by the age of 46, be able to do some extraordinary things, and I'm absolutely grateful for it. So
Let's take this back to the beginning because you said that, from where you come from.
mhm.
Tell us that story. How what happened that brought you from then to now that you can reflect on, that would be something that our audience can take as a growing point.
um so my story, is like a lot of other stories, like a lot of other people. My mother had me when she was in her very, very early 20s. She wasn't really ready to be a mom, so my grandmother ended up taking me. My grandmother had 8 kids, so you might as well say I was her ninth child. And so my grandmother, raised me until I walked out of her door at 18 years old, and she had me from when I was 3, 4 months old. And I walked out of her house at 18, and went on this extraordinary journey. But um, I think that the story, well, the lesson I'll always will tell people, now this is me not knowing who I met my mother when I was 5, and I don't know who my father is, and so I always tell folks, man, there is a lot of there's a lot of things that happen in our youth that ends up shaping us as adults, right? Sometimes it's the absence of a father or a mother, or sometimes it's some folks live a life of terror with their parents, right?
Exactly.
So everybody's journey is absolutely different. I was fortunate because I had a praying grandmother. She was stern as all get out. She didn't play no games. Um, and but that what she poured into me allowed for me to be successful. But the challenge, or what I've learned in my time period now, and looking at as I continue to cultivate my relationships with adults, is just how much our youth really shapes our journey in life. And but then there are so many people who don't take time to, again, to do that self work, to do that reflection, whether it is going and seeking counseling and speaking to someone, or really taking that time, that meditation, to really find who you are. And I did a lot of that because statistics would say that as a young black man not raised by his mom or his dad, that man, really, I should have got swallowed up by the streets. And I mean, and it wasn't that I wasn't running with the guys that got swallowed up by the streets. I did, but every path that I took, trying to hang out or trying to, be cool with the cool gang, or what I thought was the cool gang, there was always another adult that saw more in me than I saw in myself. Whether it was my chorus teacher, Miss Denise Payton, who's getting ready to retire from Fayetteville State University after I think she's been in education now for like 40 years, right?
Wow.
She was my chorus teacher when I was in junior high school, or it was Coach Eric Tucker, who was my first track and field coach back when I was a kid. And so these individuals saw in me what I could absolutely not see in myself. That kind of would drop those nuggets of stay on the right path. You got this, and so I try to share the same thing with young people today, because that helped me and encouraged me, and it just set me on a path, man. That has, like I say, it's just been extraordinary. And listen, it's not like it's all been a bed of roses, right? There's been a couple of sectors that have had some thorns as well. So, but my early life really shaped me, and I could have gone one path and be upset and angry that I didn't have, that quote unquote that family unit. But I had a grandmother who loved me and showed me love and protected me, and then I had an uncle who poured into me, what leadership was and how I should carry myself as a young man and how I should, be a leader. And those two individuals, I would always give all the credit to shape the Chris Ray that a lot of people see today.
Well, Chris, I'm gonna tell you this, because actually there's a follow-up question I got to the question I just asked, is that I see that there's a lot of similarities between yourself and myself, because even though I had both of my parents, they were too young. I grew up with them.
Right. Right. That's another. Yeah. That's another dynamic. Absolutely.
And so, my grandmother was also the strong figure, but I would there was the times that I would still go back and forth with my parents, but it was my grandmother that set the entire foundation. And so, as you say, your grandmother was stern, so was mine. Those women did not play. They were serious.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
just when I think about that, and and I see that, the strives that you made, for what you felt like was something was a little bit underserving, I could still feel the same way. But the thing that I say that set me apart is, of course, I never did all the hanging out like that, but I will tell you, there was just a lot that was missing. There was a whole bunch of holes.
Sure.
And so with those holes, despite graduating high school, I think the thing that that kind of like I ain't gonna say saved, but put me on a different path was when I joined the military. And when I joined the military, not needing structure, never did ROTC.
Right.
I actually went into the military and was like a fish out of water. I was in the Navy. So just in that process, it helped me a whole lot, because in learning to deal with thousands of personalities, being able to still be focused, be driven, is where I really start setting all of my goals before I got to where I am right now. My follow-up question to you is that as you came through those times, and let's say, well, not only when you finished high school and you went into the military, well, you went to college first. And so when you did all of that, what actually was the point that you realized that you are now stable enough to start making these goals where you started to move and shake?
Oh man, that's that's a good question. I've never had that asked. I don't know if you ever really realize when it happens, right? I think that it's things just start happening, and you are able to um, adjust and handle the responsibilities that start coming.
Mhm.
And then what ends up happening is that there are other things that begin to intersect. That it's just it becomes building blocks, right? To your point, when I was in college, I ran track. I was a track and field All American in high school, and I had this whole plan of being an Olympic star and doing all these various things. Um, but I ended up getting in an accident when I was in college, and it kind of shifted my trajectory in track. I got involved with the fraternity, and then I got involved in student government. And those two decisions set me on a different path in my life where I wanted to, public service became a big part of who I was. And um, figuring out difficult questions to impact the lives of people.
Mhm.
And so there just became uh, these various opportunities that just started coming. I became, the chapter president of my chapter.
Mhm.
But then I joined the student government and became the chair of the appropriations committee. And so there was all this learning that I you know, that I started having on structure and governmental work and how to develop relationships with my fellow government student government peers to be able to get certain things passed.
Mhm.
All of these things were just small little building blocks that eventually, um, when another opportunity would come, like in the fraternity, it was, hey, I was just a chapter president at my college, and but then I went to a meeting and one of the senior brothers at the meeting said, "Hey, you should be the state secretary. You're showing up, you're taking notes, you're doing." And so, of course, I said, "Sure, I'll step in and do that." Right. And so, little did I know that becoming the state secretary for the fraternity for North Carolina would then propel me to becoming the associate regional director, which is the collegiate leader in the region, but it's the third highest position, to eventually then becoming the national second vice president, which is the third highest position in all the fraternity, to then becoming a committee person because I did a good job in that role. And then they were like, "Well, you got a technology background. You should be the IT director," which I did. And so the IT director piece I was so comfortable with. And so when I decided to join the Army, I became an information technology, soldier who then became an information technology officer. And so all these things just kept on just building blocks to the various opportunities that then created the person that you have today. So I won't say that I know exactly when that turning point was. I think that out of all of that, I would always say when you are giving a task,
Mhm.
you do it to the best of your ability. You do it at such a high level that individuals say, "Man, you know what? Let me go ahead on and ask you to do X, Y, and Z," right? And if you're a person that eventually gets to a space that you welcome those challenges and you welcome those opportunities, you know, um, you will be able to be in a space where you'll be able to be in a space where you'll be able to take on other roles and responsibilities because are you are being prepared along the journey.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, tell me, what is the one thing that you can say to a young man or a young lady that's watching you right now at this point? What is the one great nugget that you could drop for them that would be inspiring, or something that would that would tell them how to start that path and making
right.
things happen?
Yeah, so I would say two things, right? I would say first and foremost, have grace with yourself. A lot of us don't have grace with ourselves. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially for those of us who were born um, in such a way that we could be high strung, super ambitious, so forth and so on. You know, um, you got to have grace with yourself because you're not going to do everything perfect. You're not gonna hit that bar every single time that you want to hit, but you have to be able to look back and say, man, I was always achieving to reach the bar, because there are literally people who wake up every day who don't even want to get up, who don't want to achieve that bar, don't want to reach that bar. They do not care. But if you are an individual who absolutely care, have grace with yourself, and realize that your continuous efforts will absolutely get you to where you want to go. But you got to have grace with yourself along the journey, um, because we are our biggest critic. We are the ones who beat up on ourselves the most. No matter what the world says and what people say about us and people in our, we are the biggest critic of ourselves. And when you end up having grace with yourself, um, that's where that inner strength comes from, to where, first of all, it doesn't matter what others think of you, because you know you. That's number one. And there are a lot of people walking this earth that don't know who they are. And so when you first get in touch with who you are, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, what you'll accept, what you won't accept, it gives you an inner power that allows for you the ability to move and navigate in spaces that people will say, how are they doing that? How is he doing that? How is she doing that? But you got to be able to have grace with yourself, which then in return gives you the ability to know yourself, which then gives you the ability to succeed.
And so, along with that, let me just go back and let me do this foundation again. The premise of this show and the purpose of me building this platform is, for those in the underserved communities, that don't have a voice. This is the place for them to get that voice. I like to bring people like yourself on the show that's inspirational in the things that you've done and how you actually do things in the community. And so, with that being said, can you tell me, when it comes to doing the community service that you do, what goes into that, and what actually, how do you plan to get out into the community to make people feel that there's more love than they can imagine?
Yeah, so I think that there's always two ways that you can serve your community, right? There's the individual way.
Mhm.
You quietly get up, you go to the soup kitchen, you volunteer at the soup kitchen, you volunteer at the homeless shelter, you go to the neighbor, to the sick and shut in at your that's at your church. You get that list from the pastor or from the clerk, and you go and you bring Meals on Wheels to seniors, or you cut somebody's grass, so forth and so on. Right. So there's the individual way that everybody can serve if you so choose. Right.
Mhm.
Then there's the collective way, where you are a part of a collective, a company, an organization, a nonprofit, a fraternity, a sorority, or any kind of other civic organization whose sole mission is to serve.
Mhm.
And what you're getting from that collective service is the satisfaction that that collective power has made a huge difference, right?
Mhm.
And so I think people need to know that there are two ways to do it. Individually, you can do it, and that's just as impactful if you do it with a group of people. And I've been able to do both. Right, I've volunteered or done things quietly without any fanfare, um, and then I've been a part of my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, where we've come together to make a tremendous impact in our community. Um, we're building a multi-million dollar affordable housing um, apartment complex in Washington, D.C., that we will break ground on in about 2 months. That's huge.
Mhm.
That's an absolutely huge service, that we're going to transform the lives of entire families, right? Providing a safe and affordable place for them to rest their head. Um, but then around in the same neighborhood, we've given, we've done street cleanups, or we've provided scholarships for students to go off to school so that they can be successful. And so I think that how folks are able to make the impact that they want to see is first know, hey, do I want to do this on my own, or I want to do this collectively? And either way, it's important because our communities need it. Because to your point, everyone doesn't have a voice. There are some people who are born into really horrible situations. And for whatever reason, they cannot overcome those circumstances that they're in. That is a true fact. And either they don't catch the break that they need, they don't have the willpower to do it, or there are just systematic issues that continue to put barriers in their way that they don't have the capacity to navigate around because their life experience has only given them a base of knowledge to where you only know what you know. And so I didn't know this program existed for me to be able to get out of poverty. There's a lot of people out there that just don't know it. And so that then creates a chain of events in their lives. And so when you get an opportunity to get pulled out of those circumstances, then then you have a responsibility to then make a huge difference for other people. There's no other place to live than in the service of others, and I am a believer of
Wow, that's inspiring. What inspired you to pursue a career in law?
that. Um, I just understood at a very early age when I was in college, um, the power of the law and what it can do,
Mhm.
how it can move, how it could be. And it was more on the policy development side. I knew that good laws impact people.
Mhm.
I also knew that bad laws are horrible for people.
Mhm.
And so, the hope is that you'll have good lawmakers out there who are helping to write laws that are going to change the lives of people and for the good, instead of just for a specific group's um, way.
That's being nice. I definitely understand that. Even though right now I will tell you, I've had thoughts of going back to get to do a Juris Doctorate because I definitely don't want a PhD. I have an MBA already.
Mhm.
And I really feel like if there are more people that look like us that were basically out there doing law, I think it changes a lot as to the comfort of people, but also it gives presence. Do you think presence make that big of a difference when it comes to
Oh yeah.
law?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if you're competent, right? There's a lot of folks who got a JD who aren't competent. Um, you know, but if you're competent, it absolutely adds to the presence
Right.
of who you are, and people do take you a little bit more seriously because you know learning the law helps you think about life differently. Um, your analytical skills and how you view the world is different, but you are able to join a cadre of folks that are helping to really shape society and really shape the next rules of what will be necessary for the world. So,
So the follow-up question to that is, are you specified in your degree, and are you prosecuting or defending?
oh no, let me tell you an amazing story of how amazing God is, right? So, um, when I decided to go to law school, of course, this was right after being in the military. I was working on Capitol Hill for John Lewis. Then I decided to go to law school. And while I was in law school, I realized I was a broke college student again, right? So I decided to go back to the military and I joined the National Guard. So I was active duty for uh, almost 8 years. And but then I joined the National Guard. And while I was in law school, and while I was in the Guard, they realized that I was the only signal officer, because I was an information technology officer, that had a specialty in cybersecurity. I was the only officer at that time that was also in law school. And
Mhm.
so I started writing cybersecurity policy for the Department of Defense. And so the day I graduated from law school, the very next day, DOD hired me to continue to write policy that has been instrumental in shaping the foundation of our cyber um, um, uh, apparatus for the nation. And so, when I graduated, I never took the bar. I didn't have to take the bar because I had a job the day after I graduated, and it's just been like that. I have, consulted with and worked with tons of attorneys, especially on the information technology side, um, that allows me the opportunity to continue to be in that space and be, um, somewhat of a subject matter expert around um, cyber and the law. So I always make this joke that listen, if all things don't work out in life, I can always be a practicing attorney, right?
Mhm.
I just got to go take the bar, and I have been thinking about doing it, but then this college presidency thing kind of got in the way, and so I gotta navigate around that first, because it is a heavy lift, a big lift for me right now, and I gotta stay focused on the college. Um, but if I ever did officially practice law, I would be probably one of your foremost cybersecurity attorneys, probably working with companies, working with individuals in other countries to make sure that they're having the right policies in place, to protect what is the right policies around cybersecurity. So yeah,
So you would rather be an NSA man?
I'm gonna be whoever's gonna pay me some money. That's who I'm gonna be. Whoever's gonna pay me some good dollars.
I hear you.
You said in my bio, I got 9 kids. So
Can you share some insights into your role as president of Barber Scotia College?
oh man, wow, what a journey that has been. So Barber Scotia College is the second oldest HBCU in North Carolina, founded in 1867, right, shortly after the Civil War, and it was founded for freed Black female slaves. Believe it or not, Barber Scotia is actually, was at one point, it's older than it is older than Spelman. It was the first institution in the South solely created to educate Black women. And so it was a seminary school. Then it became Scotia School for um, College for Women, and then it merged with another college, another all girls seminary school out of Alabama in the 1930s to become Barber Scotia College. And then we became co ed in the 1950s. Um, you know, a lot of amazing individuals have come through that institution. A little known history fact: Felicia Rashad's mama went there. Nick Cannon's grandmother graduated from Barber Scotia. Mary McLeod Bethune, is a graduate of Barber Scotia College, and so many other amazing women who have just gone on and done amazing things, and men as well. But in 2004, the college lost its accreditation, and and has really struggled over the last almost 20 years to try to get that accreditation back. And so 7 months ago, the board of trustees voted to bring me in as the new president. And in that experience, I have been working diligently to put the pieces back together for the college, and get us back on the road for or towards accreditation. And so it is like being the founder of a college all over again, right? I have, faculty and staff that are volunteering their time and their talents, and some of them their treasure, to help me stand back up this entire college. And so we're slowly but surely doing it. We have a lot of accreditation um, pieces that we're putting together and trying to meet those challenges. Our hope is that we'll be submitting our application for reaccreditation in October, and just it's one day at a time, man. It's a huge mountain to climb. I'll be the first one to tell you that. But I'm also um, committed to climbing it. It's just that I have to climb it one step at a time. So,
Mhm. So, how's your faculty?
so we're putting together that faculty, right? So we're pulling together adjuncts, folks who are committed. They commit to 1 year of volunteering with our classes. And so we have a nice little stable full of adjuncts who are there. We restarted classes this winter semester, and so we have a few students. We don't have a lot right now because, of course, we uh, as when you're not accredited, that means that you can't get federal financial aid as an institution, and
Mhm.
so so either you have to pay out of pocket, or you get a scholarship. And so, so my message to students that are now slowly but surely coming back and enrolling is, um, you know, if you take a chance on us, when you walk across that stage, in 4 years, we'll be accredited, right? And so, some of them are coming back and they're doing it, and I'm grateful for it. I'm thankful for it. So, we shall continue to see how it comes together. Like I said, a lot of hard work, um, a big mountain to climb, but it's one that I know is possible without a doubt.
Mm. Well, I'm sure that that after a couple of years, you'll see more than that stabilization that you're looking for, but you're going to see that growth because I'm sure that there are an enormous amount of students, especially on that particular side of North Carolina, that
Mhm.
need a place for higher education.
Absolutely.
How do you balance your responsibilities as a leader and your community involvement?
Time management is important when you get to this level, man. It just is. And I think a lot of it comes down to, again, not taking yourself too seriously. And knowing that you just got to know when to say no. And that's hard in the beginning when you're trying to establish yourself. But I feel like I've gotten to a place in my life where I can just say no. Like, I can't come, I can't speak, I can't do this. I remember when I was younger and I was trying to, and there's a time and a place for that, right? This is when I wasn't married, I didn't have any kids, so you're able to be a little bit more nimble. But then as things, as life, begins to evolve, you realize that, you gotta find that places where you gotta cut off and say, okay, I'm going to spend time with my family this weekend. I can't go to this event, and you just got to be okay with it, right? And in the beginning, it's hard, especially if you're used to always saying yes. But you got to be also comfortable in the space of saying no, um, you know, and uh, and and that just has to be the way that it is. And so, but again, it's a journey to get there because you have to figure out where you are in the journey. And I've been able to establish myself to where, in the circles that I move in, when I show up, okay, it's a big deal. If I don't show up, it's not a big deal, right? They'll see me at the next thing. And normally, what ends up happening, man, once you get to a certain level, you start seeing the same people anyway, at all the same events. So it's not the goal is just to know that you have to have the balance, because if you don't, but then at the same time too, you got to have the honest conversations with your family specifically, um, because they got to know who they with, and that this is the assignment that's been given to you on this planet, right? So you have this assignment to serve, but you got to serve your family as well. You have to serve your community, and above all, you got to you, you know above those things, you got to serve yourself in the sense of, taking care of yourself, doing the things that are right, and then ultimately serving God, and making sure that everything that you're doing is uplifting Him. So whether it's thanking Him, like as I do every day, for my children, for my beautiful wife, or if it's, asking Him to give me the strength that I need to do this work that I'm doing, because I know that I can't do it by myself. Uh, or thanking for the opportunity to just rest. All of that goes back to, just knowing where your power comes from to do the work that you got to do. Because at the end of the day, it ain't you doing it. It's God giving you the ability to do it, and that is the absolutely God's truth, right? So,
So, what we're getting right now from you, are you always this humble?
I mean, it's just who I am. Yeah, I would, you'll probably, so this is what I've learned is that, people who sit on the outskirts who don't know you and they see, the big life that you live, they will probably say, "Oh, he or she thinks that that they got it going on."
Mhm.
That always comes from a place of individuals who have yet to really take time to know who they are and to appreciate the gifts that they actually have. Because what they're doing is taking time to appreciate my gifts and not realizing that they need to do that self work. And I've gotten that a lot, right? But and I'll just say that for me, I want to believe that when you really do get to know me, and the reality is, everybody don't really get to know anybody, right?
That's
But those who get into your circle and they see you probably more than the average person, um, I would hope that they would say, "Hey man, he just works hard. He likes things to be a certain way, and in the end of the day, he wants everyone to have a great experience." And I really do mean that. But I don't shuck on knowing that I have a standard. Um, but I always try to keep center of who I am is I'm always mindful of how I deliver what I say to people. Um, because you just don't know where people, you don't know where no one's coming from, right? You don't know what issues they've had and what challenges may trigger them. And so, me speaking to you nasty, or, I need you to get this done because it's, it's just, I am very, very sensitive to that. I'm very mindful of that, I should say, right? Because just like you don't know what I've been through, you don't know what I'm going through. So don't come over here popping off of me, as a leader, right? So I think that as a leader, you have to be mindful, but that's individuals who have really taken time to, again, number one, be self-aware, um, and be in a space where you um, um, know that that's an important place to be when it comes to people, right? And a lot of leaders just don't do that. They're like, "Listen, I got a vision. I know where I want to go. I need y'all to come with me." And they just deliver it in such a way that you're kind of like, "Oh my God, okay, all right, we got this," right? um, instead of saying, but instead of delivering a space where, um, "Hey, I there's this mountain I need to climb. I can't climb it by myself. I need the help and support, um, and I need you to come with me." And I believe that at the end of the day, most people are receptive to that delivery, than the whole "help me inflate my ego and my standing." Um,
Oof.
because I need people to see me make this happen. When at the end of the day, you have absolutely done nothing but accomplish whatever it is you've accomplished by the help of other people. And again, that's a part of just not taking yourself too seriously, and just knowing that I am surrounded by some of the most extraordinary people, whether it's in the fraternity, whether it's on the college side, um, and the Chris Ray that everyone sees and they get an opportunity to follow and all of this. Man, let me tell you, man, there's so many people that work hard every day to make me look good. And I thank them. I thank them for it. And it is not just me. It's the things I can say that I've done and I've been able to accomplish has been because there's been an amazing group of people around me. I think about Rhonda Webb, who was my secretary. She was the clerk when I was the mayor, and also served as my executive assistant. Just keeping my calendar together was amazing, and that which allowed me to meet amazing people that was able to take some of my ideas to come alive for the city in order for people to benefit from my ideas. All because there was a lady who was able to make sure that my calendar was squared away. So, yeah.
Well, that in itself, I tell you, we've got to have more people like you to show up in particular places, and of course, I just pinpoint little things like that because I'm connecting dots. I just want you to know that I'm connecting dots. So when I have people like you on the show and the way I'm connecting and networking and making things happen, there are a lot of places where we need to have you to at least get the opportunity to speak to some people that need that kind of uplifting.
Yeah.
Because you're right, when people beat people down with words or just being overbearing and so forth, nobody really responds to that. Nobody wants to do anything after that.
Right.
Of course they say things behind your back, but that's
Right.
deserving.
Right. Right. But then you're not getting the very best out of that person though.
Exactly.
You're just not. And they doing just enough to make sure that they're checking clear on the first and the 15th. And and then I'm gonna go ahead on and do my other thing over here. So yeah.
So what motivated your involvement in track and field, and how has it influenced your life?
Oh man, I just realized one day I could run fast. It was one of those experiences where it was a field day in elementary school, and I just was gone. I was out, and I was out every single time. And so one of the teachers came up to me. This was like in the fourth grade, actually, and said, "You're going to be a track star." And I didn't know what that meant. All I know is that I had all blue ribbons when it was all said and done. After at and so, but again, that goes back to my previous statements about um, good people pouring into you. Just like there are some people that will say stuff like, "Oh, you're not going to be anything," right? And so, when people speak over your life, it's a real thing, and either you have to accept it or don't accept it. And I accepted that. I didn't know what a track star was, but I did accept that. And um, but she was right. I had an extraordinary talent in running, and it gave me number one, it allowed me to run up out the hood. But then it also gave me the opportunity to um, develop a level of discipline that was important when it was when I needed to put things together in my life. And so, um, you know, uh, getting up in the morning and working out before the bus came, and then going to track practice after school, and then, getting home after track practice and doing my homework, but sitting in front of the television and doing stretching, doing push-ups and sit-ups before I went to bed, and just those little things created a consistency in me that allowed for me to take with me into everything else that spilled over into my life as I grew. Right, so it was um, the diligence of realizing that if I work hard, I will see improvements. I saw that in track. I saw that in all the work that I continue to do, even to this very day. We work hard. Barbara Scotia College will be an accredited institution, right? If I work hard, maybe I'll be the mayor of a city. If I work hard, I'll make sure that I will hopefully know my craft the best way that I can for my soldiers, so that I can take them all to war and bring them all back. So it's just one of those things that's ended up spilling over into everything that I became, and I still use a lot of those lessons today. So, and then of course, as an athlete, it just makes you hungry, right? I love to win, um, but I know that it takes a level of commitment to win, and sometimes you got to dig deep. And being an athlete, especially at the level that I ran, I had to dig deep a lot of times. So.
So, as a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, what key issues did you prioritize?
Oh man, I never really got to that. So I was going to run for lieutenant governor this year. I was. It was on my things to do list. Um, but then Barbara Scotia came, and I decided not to run for office again. I decided not to run for lieutenant governor. Um, but had I stayed on the trail, and had pursued it, I think about, when the governor runs, they have these big platitudes of things that they want to do. The governor does. The LG has, specific roles here in North Carolina, they do. And so, I just thought about, again, those voices that you talked about earlier, that normally don't get a seat at the table in the room, seniors, um, you know, veterans veterans get a spotlight, but I think it's been a while since we've had a governor that's been
A
a
veteran.
veteran, right? And so, or just at that level, and someone who really speaking up for veterans in that regard. Um, you got a lot. You got kids who you got a huge high school population that's homeless in North Carolina, and so there were segments of our population that I wanted to make sure got highlighted, and thus find resources to help them. Right. Um, so that would have been what I would have done had I ran for or stayed on the lieutenant governor trail. And but then I had to take a stock of the fact that as a lieutenant governor, it could be a tough place to be. Um, uh, and I looked at my platform that I currently have, and I'm the international president of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Divine Nine organization. Heck, I might have more influence than the governor of the state of North Carolina. So, let me not, diminish the opportunities that God has already given me. But, um, I decided I wanted to do the college president thing, and that was what was important to me. So,
Wow. So let me just ask you this. I got two questions about politics.
mhm,
The first one is this. When you first ventured into that arena,
mhm.
what are the things that you learned of being a politician vice a regular person?
Um, well, I'll tell you, boy, I learned how vicious it is. Uh, that that people's thirst for power is real, and
Mhm.
one should never underestimate
Ooh,
what
you said the key
people
word.
what people will do for power. And that's at every level, whether it's school board up to the presidency of the United States. And so I learned in that process that you have to be grounded in your values, man, because if not, you will get swallowed up by the machine, and that's just the case. And then I learned on the other side that the machine is all we have, believe it or not, right? The laws that has been put in place to govern this particular society on this continent, this constitution that we have is all we have. And so you have to find a way to navigate, through that constitution to get the things that are necessary for the people that need to be represented. And the reality is that elected officials who do a pretty good job of dividing us, right? As a country, as a population, as a segment. Um, it's unfortunate because if you're breathing the air that God has put on this planet, you are a human being. And what we should be seeking is ways to make sure that everyone truly get an opportunity to live up to their truest potential. Because if you're an elected official and you know that there are some people that are born into the crappiest of situations, then you should be working your butt off to find the, to craft the policies to help them get out of there. Because why? Because human nature doesn't always loan for the one person that says, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, right? And knowing that there are folks who don't have, some folks don't have boots, to pull themselves up with. And so, how do you give them a pair of boots? Sometimes
Ooh,
it's not them pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps. Sometimes it's just you giving them some boots, and then they can do the part that you think they can. But giving them the boots require the right laws to do that. And so that's what I've learned, man, is that people's thirst for power is real. Um, and you have to be able to try to navigate through that. But then I'm also in a place of reality that I know that this is the only system we have. And since they wrote the rules, I need to know the rules and play by that game as well.
wow. So, with the political structure being the way it is today, right now, here in the 21st century, and you having some sort of some knowledge of the political structure based on your experience, what can you tell our audience in the various communities around this country? What should we be doing, looking at, or making happen as far as the political structure today? What should we be doing?
Well, let me tell you what you should not be doing is
Okay,
ignoring what's happening around you. That's
that's
what you
true.
should not be doing. And it's so easy, right? In our day-to-day grind, I'm waking up. I got to take the kids to school. I gotta get to work. I got these deadlines at work. I got, the car needs my oil change, and my mama keep on asking me to cash app her $50. Um, you got all these things that are going on in your day-to-day life, and then you got to now hear the back and forth of these politicians who make all these promises but aren't really um,
Delivering.
delivering, right? Uh, and and that becomes a tough place to be. And because we have so many other things going on in our lives, we choose not to get involved in the political process, other than the day when it comes to vote. And then half the time we're voting for people we don't even know. We don't even really know their record. We don't even know, and they know that. That's the thing. They know that, and they're banking on that, right? And so really, the elections are really determined by the margins, um, because we're trying to stir up emotions in a certain group of people to get them out, so that you just keep the machine going, right? And um, but I would always say to folks, man, as you're scrolling through TikTok or you're scrolling online, you know, truly find a space or a place where you are trying to consume what I would hope to be the right information about what's taking place, with the folks that are trying to represent you. Like, like really ask yourself, what kind of school system do I want? What kind of, what kind of economy do I want to be in? And, I give a quick example. The president of the United States has done all that they can to tackle inflation. Now, if you Google the the things that are going on with the U.S. economy right now, um, inflation is absolutely being addressed, right? Um, but we're not still feeling it when you go to the grocery store or whatever the case may be, and that is because corporations have chosen not to decrease their prices as inflation has decided to go down.
Right. And
You
they're
know,
not going to.
and they don't want to. And the thing about it is that you know, with that being the case, how does that, how do we as a people interact with that? But because there isn't um, um, uh, because there isn't a huge outcry by the people, they'll just keep on doing what they're doing, right? So, I think I was reading a report today. Um, the average inflation, I think, was like 3.2% or something like that. Last month it was like 3.3, right? But today, inflation is at 3.0, right? Which means that it's going down. And I mean, at one point, I mean, it was off the charts, right? But the
Yes.
president has done all that they can, um, to address that. But yet, and still, corporations have chosen not to ease up themselves. And
Right.
so, we as a society has a responsibility to make sure that we hold those companies accountable, because it isn't right and it isn't fair. Because my pay isn't getting any bigger, right? For so many other reasons. And so, so that milk that was used to be 2.98 is now 4.75.
Woo.
You need to bring it back down to 2.98.
Hmm.
Right? But until people really understand the power of what they have, we'll keep on getting the same results, that we're getting, and as always, just getting, you know, getting duped in the end. So
That sounds like, I know, especially a couple of years ago, when inflation was rising and prices really started rising, especially on food, and
mhm.
people were asked to stop spending money, putting all that money in the economy, because what you're doing is you're making that a real thing 3 years out.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Three
absolutely.
years out, the prices are not going down.
Right. At all. At all. They are not going down at all. And the thing about it is, if you think about, there was at one point the highest um that inflation had been was like 9%. Right.
Yes.
And I think that was in 2022. I think it had got up to as high as like 9% or something like that. You know, but today is at 3%,
Right.
you know? And I think folks need to know that. They need to know that, so as political ads are being ran, and folks are trying to frame a story. If inflation was at XYZ and now it's down here, but prices, I'm not feeling the prices at the companies that I'm that I'm that I'm been working with, and I mean, that I've been patronizing, then obviously, is it the government or is it the companies? You
Mm,
know, and
that's a good.
that's the question. That, yeah. And so what the hope is that you have one political party that does a horrible job of messaging, and then you have another political party that won't do the right thing to share that message because it's about power.
Mm,
And that's on both sides. I mean, not, both sides want power. Everybody want power. So, but the reality is that the economy don't lie. It's like, this is what it is. This is what inflation was, and this is what it is today. But for some reason, we're still not feeling the relief, whether it's at the pump or at the grocery store. And that's because there's a bunch of greed out there in these corporations. And and even though they are getting a break on the back end because inflation is lower, they're
mm.
not reflecting it in their prices on the front end. So which means that their profits are going to be even higher, before there becomes an outcry, and then whatever will happen, and then we begin the cycle all over again. So, but anyways,
Well, that's also the reason why they're doing all the layoffs now. It's
that's right.
because those profits are so high, they're not sharing not
That's
one
right.
penny with
That's
no.
right. And they can go through, and so it's like an accordion, right? It'll be an
Yeah.
accordion, and then some of these corporations will lay off all these folks. There'll be, then they'll fall into some challenges and issues, and then they're going to have to hire people all over again because you won't have your risk management folks, and you're this and you're that, and then they'll get in trouble by the law, and then they'll have to hire people back. It's just an interesting, it's just it's just all interesting. So.
So, could you discuss your vision for education, considering your role in academia?
Well, so being in higher ed, it's a new space for me, and it's a beast of a mode of a place to be at. But what I want to do is I want to really create a space for. Um, I want to reimagine, what higher ed looks like from an affordable standpoint, and even from the HBCU lens, right? Historically, Black colleges and universities have been behind for so long, and there's so many reasons why that has happened. But being the president of a private college, you really have to rethink the process. You really got to rethink how things, move, and how we're ran and how we're managed, and one of the things that I want to do is reimagine where our investment dollars go into, so that we can build the proper infrastructure to support, the future, right? And so for me, HBCUs have not done a good job of online investment. Going online is the future. That, I mean, that's not the future. That's today, and a lot of our predominantly white institutions have done a fantastic job of doing that, while HBCUs have been behind. And so my hope is that we will become Barber Scotia College will become a model for what that's going to look like, creating an affordable education, um, for folks, a real affordable education, doing it by volume, figuring out ways to share responsibility, whereby I have two other HBCUs that are in about 20 minutes driving distance between me and the other. And how can we get to a place to where we're sharing resources? That one professor that teaches cybersecurity class for all three institutions, right? And if you want to pay that professor $90,000 and I pay them 30, the other two pay them 30. There goes 90 right there. But then all of our students are enrolled in that class, or however it is. I think that's where we have to start reimagining how we can be supportive of one another and create a true um, capacity to build what the future could look like, right? But that just takes a different way of thinking, and I'm committed to that. We'll just see if the rest of the folks that want to come along with me are committed to that as well. And I would say as well too. One of the things we've done a poor job of is understanding that everyone doesn't need a college degree. There's some people that were born to use their hands, and that's how God made them. And so,
Right.
therefore, they need to be trained in such a way that they have gotten their HVAC license, their electrical license, their plumbing license, and these individuals can go on and do amazing things. Do amazing things. Um, that's critical. That's important. That's what has to happen. And so I want to create an institution that's not only helping folks become licensed tradesmen, um, but they're getting certifications because again, certifications are necessary in certain industries, or folks are getting traditional degrees. All of that should be happening, and it should be done at an affordable cost. So that's what I'm trying to create at Barber Scotia, because I believe that that's possible. And we need to get away from the old model of how we saw higher ed and get to a new model. So,
So, just as you think about what you done, what you just said, that all of that real serious good information you just put out. Do you think, had HBCUs, been funded properly like the other schools, that we would be in a different situation?
oh God, without a doubt, yeah, 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 absolutely. When you are, drastic measures calls for, you know, um, drastic times calls for drastic measures, right? And you think about throughout the history of all these institutions, they've had some drastic measures that had to be taken because they weren't getting the proper funding, but they were trying to make sure that the students got quality education. But that sometimes came at the cost of, um, you know, uh, cutting resources in certain places because you didn't have the money to cover that, right? Um, and that was happening. That happened for over 100 years for some of these institutions, and that's a tough place to be. It's an absolutely terrible place to be, but that's what it was. And you know, I think that you have so many brilliant black minds that were on many of these campuses, but imagine the fact that they couldn't even support the way that they wanted to because they didn't have the resources to. They couldn't keep up. They couldn't, here you have an economy changing around you. The educational landscape is changing around you. I would be interested to know when computers started coming to white schools. I wonder when our HBCU started getting actual computers, right? You know,
How many years later?
how many years later? So that's a great example of um, the experience. So imagine in the 90s, you in the 90s, um, um, going to college at a PWI where you got the chance to get into your first computer, right? Personal, gateway, get your gateway
Yes.
computer, right? But then your counterpart goes to HBCU and they don't have computers yet.
Right.
They still on word processors. They still type in, whatever, typewriters or whatnot. And then so now you go through your 4 years in college, you don't get exposure to that. And then you go into the workplace where they have computers. And now you haven't had the opportunity for the last 4 years to be trained up or know what, a floppy disk is and a hard disk and all, so now you're learning that on the job from someone else who went to a PWI who's now ahead of you because you don't have that skill set.
Yep.
So think about now you multiply that times a couple million people that went through that, right? And then you get to realize, I mean, man, we got a long way to go, brother. We got a long way to
We
go.
do. I mean, there's a lot of progress, but there's still several more years of stuff that's got to happen in order to catch up. Because I think the catch up is like it's a ways off, and we're still doing great things, but I think still resourcefully, we're still behind based on, just time in general because time is really major for us and we've got to catch up.
Right.
So, I got one last question for you. How do you believe your gifts and talents contribute to making your community better?
Um, I think that there have been a lot of different aspects of being able to use the gifts that God has given me to make my community better. Like I talked about the affordable housing project that our fraternity is getting ready to do. I think about my time as mayor, and I'll give you just a quick example. I remember one day watching this lady pushing a stroller on the side of the road. It didn't have a sidewalk, and so um, there was the road, there was a barrier, and then it was like this little goat trail. I call it a goat trail. When you walk along enough, you wear out the path, right, to get to where you got to go. And then when she got past the rail, the rail that was on the side of the road, there was still some more road to go,
Mhm.
right? And so she's still pushing the stroller, and then she had stepped off into the road and then stepped back onto the little trail. And I was like, wow. And then I started realizing, taking account that we didn't have enough sidewalks in our community, right? So I had a conversation with the board, and we talked about what that was going to cost us and the funding and all of that, things like that, and how we really need to think through a walkable community, right? And so we ended up putting in these sidewalks, and I think a few months had passed, and once it was all done and we got through the budgeting process and got those done, and I think about a year later, um, I saw a couple of women then pushing their kids on in their strollers on the sidewalks, right? And it was just that one little action when I think about how safe the community is today because we have more sidewalks, right? Because there was a mayor who saw that there was a need. I don't know how many lives we may have saved. I don't know how, but what I do know is we have sidewalks. And so there are people now that can push strollers, they can walk, they can run, they can, safely and not worry about, stepping off into the road and getting ran over. So I just think that there are a lot of examples. If I know personally in my life, I guess if I go back through, but man, I just do this work and I just keep it moving. I don't even remember half the stuff I've done, but what I do know is
Mhm.
I just I use the talents I got until I can't use them no more, you know, because it's all for a time. And so we just keep doing it.
Well, I tell you, I want to thank you for blessing us with your time and with your presence here today, because it's been very, 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 learned. It's a learned experience that I think we all can get something from. And so I just want to tell you that just based on that, and and when I actually reached out to you, to bring you on the show, it was based on what I read, that actually had me reaching out to you. I want to tell you that it's always a pleasure when there is somebody that has done the things, some of the things that I'm looking to actually make a norm, but not just that, but you're still doing it. And it's the part that you're still doing it that's much more impressive than anything. That's the example that we all need to have, to lead by, and to follow. And I just want to thank you, but also I want to ask you that when we're done with this show, there's a couple of questions that I really need to ask you, because there's a special that I'm doing that I really want you to be a part of.
All right. Well, if it fits into what I got going on, we'll make it happen.
And I thank you for your
All
time,
right.
and everybody that was out there watching. I appreciate everybody. If you, for those of you that are watching on the YouTube channels, please subscribe and hit the notification buttons, because it's going to be very, very important, especially for Mr. Ray, because Mr. Ray is one of the folks that I know that you guys will want to vote for as America in Black and White's Person of the Year. At the end of the year, we will actually announce who is the winner of this award. And I'm more than sure that you're going to get several votes, sir.
Well, I appreciate that, and I look forward to. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for getting information out to the people, and and I know that um, uh, that through your efforts, there will be folks that will not only be introduced to a new generation of leaders, but individuals that will, be able to see that, what is possible if we just roll up our sleeves and just appreciate the diversity of all of us that are out here making a difference. So thank you for the time. Thank you for loaning your platform, to me, and just, you guys all be blessed. All right, I gotta go. I got a whole bunch of other stuff waiting for me now.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Well, you have a wonderful evening, and I want to thank you again.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.